Wait a minute, Celeste. You've never ever had non-relationship sex ever.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like as far as me being who I am, right? I would never approach a guy with something like that because that's not the first thing that I want out of him.
Okay, but now let me tell you why Celeste is not going to do it because
Mode 1.
Me and Celeste understand that will devalue us with dealing with a man. Celeste knows that if Celeste was mode 1 with dealing with a man, she would straight up be devalued.
What does that mean when you say devalued?
It's kind of like
wait, ARC. What she's saying is mode 1 kills the manipulation, and that's a fact. It does.
I
agree with
that.
It does. That's exactly what she said. She just
what happens is that you actually don't get what you want from the man. He actually gets what he wants from you. So when you're dealing with a man, and it's a power. I'm not talking about like submitting to a man. I'm talking about in the beginning stages. A man already want pussy. That's straight up because he's already attracted to you. You're attracted to him. We know sex gonna come, but what can you get more with dealing with this man? I need more than a conversation. I need more than just sex. So that right there alone devalues me as a woman if I'm just giving you sex.
No, I disagree with that.
Wait, let me finish. Let me tell you why. Because if you're not giving me no commitment, how are you building me back up? You're not giving me anything.
Why do I need to build you up?
Because I'm actually opening my legs to you.
A lot of people, in particular, I'm gonna put this mainly on women. There's some things that both men and women I disagree with when they start talking about casual sex. But here's the reality: casual sex is for when you just want to fuck. Period. It ain't for edifying someone's self-esteem and building someone. That's relationship talk. For casual sex is basically, I'm horny, I'm attracted to you, I'm horny, but I don't want to commit to you in a relationship. I don't want you to be my boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, fiance. I just want to exchange orgasms with you for X number of days, X number of let's start with hours.
Nigga just need a nut.
That devalues a woman though.
And so that your conversation chance shouldn't even be a factor, because then you're diving out of the realm of casual sex.
That's why casual sex don't benefit women. Casual sex do not benefit women. Are more so statistics when they indulge in casual sex, because we are the carrier of the children. We are the carrier of your sperm. Your DNA is left on my brain.
So you're saying right here on Platinum Show that no woman should ever indulge in casual sex?
No woman should indulge in casual sex because it devalues me as a woman. So if I slept with 100 different men, will any man value me as a woman if I just indulge in casual sex? Let's be honest.
You're basically making the argument that women shouldn't have casual sex.
Yes, that's true.
A different conversation. That's a different conversation. My conversation is about if you got a man in the room and a woman in the room and they're both interested in casual sex, how should they verbally communicate their interest to each other? And my answer is directly, straightforwardly, no head games, no manipulating, no bullshit. On that note, Platinum, thank you, brother. You got me to stay on longer than an hour and a half longer than I planned on. Much respect to you, but I really do got to bounce. Celeste, China, we had some spirited debate.
Okay.
I appreciate you.
You my man. Hey, I got to bounce.
Thank you, bro.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, bro. And, the panel enjoyed you, man. Thank you. Okay, but what about being direct, though? Let's just, with a certain degree of respect and cockiness, and the guy's attractive. What about a guy that's basically being direct? Like, look at all that dating and shit. I don't do that. Like, when you going to find some free time, me and you going to enjoy it too. So when we going to hook up? Do you guys appreciate that?
Listen, I'm going to say this. I think with a lot of people, like, you got to be an open woman to actually understand attraction. I think a lot of people don't actually understand it. If a person approach you, obviously they're attracted. Obviously they want to fuck. You don't have to say it out your mouth to have that fucking look or to have that energy, to carry that energy. Mm-hmm. I talk a lot about sexual energy as well, but you don't have to actually say it out your mouth to know that a man just want to get it in. Like, I know a man want to have sex with me, but do we have to say it? No. So at the end of the day, like, I don't think that has to be said if you're dealing with a grown, mature woman that know who she is sexually inside and out and actually understand attraction. So why, in my mind, a man has to say straight out, "I want to fuck you"? That sounds like some teenage type of shit, like in teenagers
Well,
in
so
high school.
I got you.
What's up, fellas? Happy Tuesday to you. Now, I can tell you up front, this video shouldn't be too long because I got a Skype or telephone consultation in about roughly a half hour. So, yeah, I don't think I can talk more than roughly 30 minutes. But I just felt compelled to come on here. Now, I'll be honest, man, 90% of the content I'm about to talk about is repetitive. But then again, realistically, some portion of all of my videos is me repeating knowledge, wisdom, insight, and advice and commentary from some previous videos. So really, all of my videos, to one degree or another, are repetitive. But specifically, this video is going to mainly cover two things I've covered before. Number one, the issue of what's known as subcommunication. Subcommunication. For those of you not familiar with that term, that's a term that's used by a lot of popular Caucasian and non-black pickup artists. Subcommunication. Not too many black men who are pickup artists or dating coaches use that term. The term that black men would use would be masculine energy, sexual energy, or just simply nonverbal communication or nonverbal game. I've heard brothers just simply refer to it as your nonverbal game as opposed to verbal game. So I've addressed that at least, I want to say minimum, like 2 or 3 previous videos. Another thing I'm going to talk about is related to that is why direct verbal game is important, particularly as it relates to quickly and effectively identifying and exposing the archetype of women that I refer to as manipulative time wasters. And on a quick side note, on that term, and I mentioned this recently on somebody's live stream, there's a lot of terms I came up with that I originated that some people have assumed were just general manosphere terms. No. Like, for example, when it comes to my 5 archetypes of women, reciprocator, rejector, wholesome pretender, erotic hypocrite, manipulative time waster, at least 3 of those 5 I originated. Wholesome pretender, that's an original term of mine. Erotic hypocrite is an original term of mine. Manipulative time waster is an original term of mine. Those are 3 terms that I came up with. Those were not general manosphere terms. And I know what I talked about. I talked about it. The young brother named Bernard Riley interviewed me last Friday. So a lot of my Patreon subscribers have already seen that interview, and a lot of my black male followers have already seen it. But I briefly mentioned that then. Yeah, because I heard there was this guy doing a video using the term manipulative time wasters as if it was just a general manosphere term. No, that's my shit. You know I'm very protective of my stuff. Stuff that I originated and or popularized. I'm very protective about my stuff. Yeah, manipulative time waster, that is an Alan Roger Currie original term. Just like alpha male with beta traits. I came up with that. Beta male with alpha traits. I came up with that. Those are not general manosphere terms. So, like, I remember when I first came out with my book, The Beta Male Revolution, do you know some people thought that was just like kind of a more or less a general manosphere concept or general manosphere phrase. No, I came up with the beta male revolution. I came up with the beta male revolution. So anyway, I don't want to go on a long rant about that. So here's the thing. I was just earlier today, there's a brother, black male YouTube content creator who goes by the name Platinum Elite, or for short, just Platinum. But his channel is Platinum Elite. He asked me to do an interview about my new book, No Free Attention, and I agreed to do it. Now, realistically, we didn't even really spend that much time talking about my book. I think only about maybe 15% of the discussion ended up being about my new book, No Free Attention. We mainly talked about the effectiveness of my Mode 1 approach, which of course is representative of direct verbal game. So here's where I'll start. Like I said, I ain't got much time. As you know, you've heard me talk about basically 5 types of game. 2 types of verbal game and 3 types of nonverbal game. To refresh your memory, the main 2 types of verbal game that men use in an attempt to get a woman in bed is direct verbal game and indirect verbal game. Mode 1 would be representative of direct verbal game, and also Mode 4. Mode 4 is also representative of direct verbal game. Then there's indirect verbal game. Within the parameters of my teachings, there's also 2 modes that fall into indirect. Mode 2 would be indirect. You're indirect in the sense that you're very cautious and vague and ambiguous. You're very cautious with your words and your language, and you're very vague and ambiguous. You're not real specific. That's Mode 2. Mode 3 is when you either are just so cowardly that you're scared to express any desire, interest, or intention to women. You just hold your desires, interests, and intentions in. You suppress them or hold them in. You never express them at all. Or at minimum, you lie. You blatantly lie to women about what your desires, interests, and intentions are. The most common example of Mode 3 would be if you met a woman that you wanted to engage in 1 or more episodes of short-term, non-monogamous casual sex, but you blatantly lie to the woman and tell her that you're interested in a long-term, emotionally profound, strictly monogamous romantic relationship with her in order to motivate her to have sex with you. That would be Mode 3, when you just flat out lying. So, as I always like to say, Mode 2 is when you lie by omission. Mode 3 is when you lie by commission. Lying by omission means you don't tell the whole truth. You don't lie to a woman, but you don't tell her the whole truth, which would be that you want casual sex. That's all you're interested in. So I talked about two forms of verbal game: direct verbal game and indirect verbal game. Then there's 3 general forms of nonverbal game. Actually, I would say there's probably realistically about 4 or 5 versions of nonverbal game, but a couple of them are now either illegal or at minimum highly unethical. For example, drugs and liquor game. Drugs and liquor game used to be popular in the 60s, 70s, and very early to mid 80s. It was drugs and liquor game. Now, that's considered date rape. So nobody talks about drugs, liquor game. But that's the game I don't include when I talk about nonverbal game. The 3 most prominent forms of nonverbal game that are not considered illegal or highly unethical would be looks game, which centers around the aesthetic appeal of your face and or your physique. Money and status game, when you just use the appeal of your career success, your financial success, and your fame and social status in an attempt to motivate women to have sex with you. And then 3rd would be what I mentioned already, subcommunication, or what a lot of black men refer to as masculine sexual energy, or just masculine energy, or just sexual energy, or some people just call it nonverbal game. That focuses on your demeanor and your disposition. Similar to looks game, but a little different. When you're using, nonverbal body language cues to let a woman know your interest. So here's the thing. Again, I was having a discussion with the brother Platinum Elite earlier today, and he happened to have 2 women on the panel. He invited 2 women, I guess, to more or less try to challenge the effectiveness of my Mode 1 approach, which is interesting because since I've been on YouTube, probably 99% of the people who've challenged the effectiveness and validity of my Mode 1 approach has typically been men, other men. I say only maybe 1% of the time have I had women challenge the effectiveness and validity of my Mode 1 approach. But yeah, the only time I've really had discussions about my Mode 1 approach directly with women, as most of you know, I had a one-on-one interview with this black female YouTuber that goes by the name Irene Yvette. That was in mid-January of 2019, roughly about 2 years ago. She was the first female since I've been on YouTube that interviewed me about my Mode 1 approach. And the second was these two women who I'm actually getting ready to do an interview with next month in about 2 weeks. Sister George, Danielle George, aka Sister George, and another sister named who goes by the name Concrete Rose. I forget her real name, but she goes by the name Concrete Rose. They're going to interview me about my book, No Free Attention, in about roughly 2 weeks. And so those are the only women I've talked to before today about Mode 1. So Platinum Elite had these two women, one named Celeste and one named China. That was the names they go by. One goes by the name Celeste, another one goes by the name China. And skipping over a bunch of, miscellaneous trivial details, most of the action happened towards the end of the live stream. And even a little bit happened even after I jumped off. I had to jump off, but I went back and heard some of the stuff I missed after I jumped off, and I heard China was talking about it. And what she said, well, I'll start with what both of them said while I was still on the live stream. Here was an argument that these two women kept trying to present, and honestly, it was pissing me the fuck off because I've heard it 2 million times before. Remember when I talked about, I did that video talking about the top 5? I said almost all of the arguments against Mode 1 can be narrowed down to generally 5 arguments. All my haters and critics, all of their various arguments and attempts to undermine my Mode 1 approach basically comes down to 5 specific arguments. One has to do with looks. One has to do with the Me Too movement. Some other one, I don't feel like going through all of them, but if you remember, one of them was Mode 1 only works with women who are highly promiscuous sluts. That was one of them. That's one of the arguments I've heard like 2 million times. That Mode 1, you're only going to have success with Mode 1 if you interacting with a woman that's a sexually indiscriminate, meaning non-selective, highly promiscuous slut type, which is bullshit. It's just bullshit, and I pointed that out. I've shredded that argument like 2 million times over the last 20 years. Shredded it. Emphasis on the word shred. I've shredded that argument. My life is a testimony against that fucking argument. Because people don't in real life know the quality of women I've been in bed with because of Mode 1. And they haven't been sexually indiscriminate, highly promiscuous slut types. A few have, but most of them have not been. So that's a bullshit argument. Now, honestly, I mostly get that argument from men, but I've gotten it a few times from women, including today. These two women were basically trying to make that argument. They was like, Alan, in so many words, they were like, Alan, with all due respect, I think Mode 1 only works with women who don't value themselves, have low self-esteem, and are basically sexually indiscriminate, highly promiscuous sluts. Insert dog face here. So what are you saying? What are these women saying? So you're saying every woman who indulges in one or more episodes of short-term non-monogamous casual sex is a slut? If that was true, which is not, but let's say for argument's sake that was true, shit, then I would argue that fucking 90, 95% of women walking planet Earth are fucking sluts then. If you're gonna put that argument forth, shit. Then you basically saying no less than 95% of women in society are fucking sluts. Because most women in today's society have had at least a handful of episodes of sex outside the context of marriage and outside the context of a long-term, romantically monogamous relationship. That argument is bullshit. Just because a woman engages in casual sex does not automatically mean she's a slut. Y'all don't know what the fuck a slut is, if y'all think that. Now, in their partial defense, though, there was a time when the label of slut did apply to any woman who had sex outside the context of marriage. You've heard me talk about it. I talk about it, I think, briefly in the Beta Male Revolution, in what's known as the Victorian era, which was popular in Europe, and then it had traces of it that influence here in the United States. But in the Victorian era, in the 19th century, this is where the whole notion of the prudish, strictly monogamy-oriented good girl came from. It was most highly talked about during the era was known as the Victorian era. In the Victorian era, very snobbish, pretentious, uppity type women who wanted to attract wealthy husbands, they basically put out the message that if you're a woman and you've had sex outside the context of marriage, if you've had sex with anybody, any man that wasn't your husband, you're a slut. You're a slut and you don't deserve to be married. That was the message during the Victorian era in overly simplistic terms. That if you're a woman and you had sex with any man that wasn't your husband, you're a slut. And furthermore, you do not deserve to ever get married. Like some of you might not know, but you know how women have their white bridal gowns when they get married? And during the Victorian era, a white bridal gown was supposed to represent that you were a virgin. Basically, if you weren't a virgin, you weren't supposed to have on any type of white bridal gown. You could wear a red one, a blue one, some other color one. But if you weren't a virgin, you weren't supposed to wear a white bridal gown during the Victorian era, and for a few decades after the Victorian era, it pretty much ended. You weren't supposed to wear one because that was supposed to represent that a woman was a virgin. So all that to say, there was a time when, if you just simply had sex outside the context of marriage, you were considered a slut. Then later on, let's fast forward to about maybe like the 50s, 60s, 70s. Then it later got transferred to, well, you're not a slut if you've had sex outside the context of marriage. If you've had sex within the context of, say, a long-term boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, we'll give you a pass. We won't judge you or slut-shame you. But if you've had sex without a man being your husband, your fiance, or at minimum your long-term boyfriend, then you're a slut. All this is people's judgmental bullshit. Men and women fuck. Men and women love to fuck. If they choose to fuck, who are you to pass judgment on them? You can choose not to date them, you can choose not to marry them, but you ain't in a position to pass judgment on nobody. If you're a spiritual person, you know only God is the only one who can pass judgment on anybody. You ain't got the right to pass judgment on nobody. And realistically, the definition is always going to be different. I've heard some men say if a woman's had sex with more than 100 men, she's a slut. I've heard other men say if a woman has sex with over 50 men, she's a slut. I've heard other men say if a woman's had sex with more than 25 men, she's a slut. I've heard some men say if a woman's had sex more than 3 men, she's a slut. Seriously. Here on YouTube and in real life, I've heard men say that. Some men believe if a woman has had casual sex with more than 3 men, that automatically means she's a slut. Which is stupid. I'm going to tell you this. If you're a man and you go around saying to people, I'm not going to marry a woman who's had casual sex with 3 or more men, then you ain't getting married. 99.9% chance you ain't getting married. Real talk. You ain't fucking getting married. getting married. Let me move on. I'm running out of time. I only got about 10 minutes left. So that was the first thing I disagreed with. They were trying to say that Mode 1 only, they said it in different ways, different fashions, but essentially they were saying that we believe the only women that Mode 1 works with is low self-esteem, highly promiscuous slut types. That's bullshit. Mode 1 works with any woman that got a pussy that gets wet. I didn't stutter. Mode 1 has the potential to work with any woman. Uh-oh.
I'm reminding you. Skype consultation. I'm reminding you. Skype consultation.
That's what most of my days are filled with. Skype and telephone consultations and responding to email consultations. So that means, again, I get about 20 minutes, about 10 minutes left. Mode 1 has potential to work with any woman that finds you physically attractive, sexually appealing, that has a pussy that gets wet. If a woman does not find you physically attractive and or sexually appealing, or something's wrong with her pussy, like, I don't know, she has some kind of sexual trauma in her life, then obviously Mode 1 ain't gonna work. But here's my argument to that. I always hear people say, hey, Alan, Mode 1, there's a lot of guys Mode 1 won't work for. There's a lot of guys Mode 1 won't work for. There's a lot of women, different types of women that Mode 1 won't work on. Name me one method that does work on all women. I'll wait. That's what I fucking want to know. Name me one method of hooking up with women that does work on all women. Regardless of age, regardless of race and ethnicity, regardless of their religious morals and values and ethics, regardless of their level of education, regardless of their level of intelligence and education. Name one, just one. Just one. And I'll give you $1,000 fucking dollars. Yes, I said I'll give you $1,000 if you can name one. The first response usually is, well, tricking. Tricking don't work on all women. Quit lying. I've seen guys with my own eyes get rejected from offering women money to sleep with them. Tricking don't work with all women. Next. Well, not tricking, but if you take a woman out to dinner a few times and wine and dine her and have, friendly conversation with her first, that don't work. If it did, I would have never wrote Mode 1. I know a lot of motherfuckers who have taken a woman out on 1 date, 2 dates, 3 dates, 4 dates, 5 dates, had friendly, entertaining, emotionally empathetic conversation with them and never got a chance to sniff that pussy. So that don't work. All that indirect bullshit that y'all try to act like works with all women. It don't. So let's push that to the side. What else you got? What else you got? What else you got? Sick of these people saying, both men and women, oh, well, Alan, Mode 1 seems like it works for you and maybe a percentage of your clients, but it doesn't work for all men and it won't work on all women. What fucking does? If there was one technique that magically worked for all men with all women, that person who created that technique would be a multi-billionaire, trillionaire as I speak right now. That person would be a fucking trillionaire right now. You know what I said on one video, as controversial as it was to say? You want to know the closest thing to almost a guaranteed way of getting a woman in bed? And the caveat is that it's illegal. You're going to end up in prison, but it's rape. Believe it or not, that's the closest thing to a guaranteed way to have sex with any woman you meet is a raper. Now, of course, once you rape her, you're going to be in prison. And once you get in prison, you're going to be raped, if not killed. So you can scratch that off the table. But honestly, when you examine all the methods, rape, or to a lesser extent, date rape, is arguably maybe the closest method to, but other than that, ain't no guarantee. Tricking ain't no guarantee. Offering a woman money and materialistic possessions does not work for all men, and it does not work on all women. Whining and dining, having friendly, flattering, entertaining, emotionally empathetic conversation with women prior to trying to fuck them, that don't work for a lot of guys. A lot of guys end up getting played, which is why I wrote The Possibility of Sex and more recently, No Free Attention. Even lying to a woman. Lying to a woman and making her believe you in love with her. You can set yourself up for getting played. That don't work for every man. It don't work on all women. Because some women are savvy enough to know you lying to their ass. So next, what you got? What you got for me, Alan Roger Currie? What you got for me? What method you want to propose that works magically for all men, no matter if they tall, short, fat, skinny, rich, broke, educated, uneducated, black, white? What method you got that works for all men? None. So shut the fuck up. What method you got that magically works on all women? Whether those women are 8, 9, or 10, or 4, 5, or 6, whether they're educated, uneducated, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, free-spirited, prudish, religious, non-religious, what method you got? Why don't you just shut up with that noise about Mode 1 don't work for all men and it don't work on all women? There ain't no method that works for all men. There ain't no method that works on all women. Period. End of story. Now, my final thing, and then I got to wrap this up. Now I only got about 3 or 4 minutes left. Now, this part happened after I bounced off the live stream. The woman, China, after I left, I heard her tell Platinum, she said, one of the problems I have with Alan Roger Currie's Mode 1 approach is just the fact that he got to feels the need to verbalize his sexual desires, interests, and intentions to women, period. Why can't he just give her a certain look and basically communicate his sexual desires, interests, and intentions to women in a nonverbal way? Again, that's what's known as subcommunication, or using masculine sexual energy game. Well, I'll tell you the simple reason. See, this is what people get wrong about Alan Roger Currie. A lot of men and women, they think the only reason why I'm on one with women, which means I'm very verbally bold, upfront, specific, straightforwardly honest when it comes to expressing my sexual desires, interests, and intentions to women. That's Mode 1. A lot of people think Mode 1 is all about identifying the women who are interested in having sex with you. No. If you believe that or assume that, then you don't know my backstory. I'll just say that. You don't know my backstory. Because if you know my full backstory, you'll know at least 50 to 60, I would say roughly, if I had to put in percentage, I would say at least 50 to 60% of the reason why I started being Mode 1 was actually not to identify the women who were definitely interested in having sex with me. You could do that being Mode 2, if I'm being real. If you're in the company of what I refer to as a reciprocator, which means a woman who's definitely interested in having sex with you, you could be Mode 2 and end up in bed with a reciprocator. You don't have to be Mode 1 to end up in bed with a reciprocator. Matter of fact, I did a video, if y'all remember, when I was doing a spirited debate with a couple people about looks. I said, looks alone only help you with reciprocators. Looks alone only help you with... You don't need to be Mode. You don't need verbal game to get a reciprocator in bed. The reason why verbal game, and particularly my brand of verbal game, which again is referred to as my Mode 1 approach, at least 50 to 60% of the reason why I'm Mode 1 with women is to identify the manipulative time wasters of the world. Not the reciprocators of the world. Not even necessarily the wholesome pretenders or erotic hypocrites, although that's important too. But out of my 5 archetypes, the number one archetype I'm trying to identify the quickest is the manipulative time waster. The woman who wants you to think she's interested in giving you some pussy, but in actuality, she has a 0% interest in having sex with you. I want to identify that woman as quickly as possible. You cannot identify a manipulative time waster by being nonverbal. Let me repeat that. You cannot identify a manipulative time waster by being 100% nonverbal or even vague and ambiguous. If you're vague and ambiguous with a manipulative time waster, you're going to get played. You're going to get played. I will bet you money on that. You are going to fuck. Even Ramil Amir, if there's at least one person I can think on top of my head who would acknowledge that, you remember that video? It was called Black YouTuber Admits That One of the Detriments of Indirect Verbal Game is that you will many times put yourself in a position to get played. That was Ramil Amir. Ramil Amir admitted because he was promoting basically Mode 2 one time on a live stream. He basically, in so many words, said his main approach is Mode 2, being vague, not flat out lying, but being vague and ambiguous. But he acknowledged, he said, I don't remember the exact words, but essentially what he said was, he said one of the weaknesses of being Mode 2 is that many times you're going to put yourself in a position to be exploited and manipulated by women. And that's what I've been saying since the fucking 1980s. At minimum since the 1990s, I've been saying that all along. And that's half the reason, why I started being Mode 1. Again, my sole specific reason for being Mode 1 was not to identify just reciprocators. You can be Mode 2 and identify a reciprocator. Mode 1 mainly helps you quickly identify the wholesome pretenders of the world, definitely the erotic hypocrites of the world, and even more definitely the manipulative time wasters of the world. Get it? Got it? Good. I got to go to work.